I suppose so.
Well, we can always start with, of course, that that failure of a shot. So,
How do you think? Never mind. Go ahead.
as the creamy captain, I am in fact a small, about 2 foot tall kitten in a hat, and I sail a tiny boat across the waves. And gosh dang.
You know, you wouldn't have to
And-
focus it off. I was just playing something else.
You know what? We're just gonna sit here, okay? No single player, no game needs to be happening while I'm telling the story anyway. Alright? So, as I sail the waves in my tiny boat, I come across many different interesting characters, and all sorts of stories are told to me for free inside of any local taverns I decide to enter, for I am the most adorable thing they've ever seen. I met, a while back though, a sad fellow. This was about 2 months ago, by the name of Nilivor. He himself had been on a few adventures here and there, but it didn't seem like he got to tell his story very often. So I pulled out my log and began to write down what he had to say. He told me at the age of about 18, he had worked on the farm with his mother for a long time, for his father had passed about 5 years ago. So it was up to him and his mom to take care of the farm all by themselves. He didn't have a lot of friends while growing up. Having the responsibility of taking care of a homestead, of course, eats up a lot of your social time. So, his mom was, of course, his best friend. Spent many nights and days tending to the farm. And everything started to seem the same. He wanted more to his life. He didn't want to abandon his mother as well, but at some point, he had to go out on his own. Thankfully, or as some may put it, misfortunately, fate decided to make that decision for him. As a band of bandits, decided to raid his homestead, for they had been traveling for many days without food, and instead of paying for it with coin, they decided they would rob the people and take from the land what they could not obtain on their own. They had cornered his mother, and he, at the time, was defenseless. He didn't know how to fight. He couldn't take on 5 men by himself. So, he decided, and apparently, while sitting at this table with him, he hadn't shared this information with many other people, besides the 5 other mercenaries he traveled with. He decided to make a deal with a demon that day. His soul for power to protect his mother in that instance. It was a hard bargain, but one he was willing to make, but not without a careful contract. See, he may have been alone all these years, without, of course, friendship, but that didn't make him stupid. See, he decided that if he was still going to have to do this, even in this dire situation, he wasn't going to be entrapped as a slave for the rest of his life. So, in his contract, he made sure to put down exactly what would get him free. He wrote that the specific contract with this demon was that he must kill other devils and demons when asked to, further the devil's reputation. He would never ask him to undertake devils or demons he was incapable of killing, and would never stop him from killing a devil or demon on his own volition. In exchange, he granted him the power that he wished for, and, of course, no contract with a demon is ever sold without his eternal soul. See, though, the way he phrased this didn't prevent him from ever going to go take on the demon that had taken his very soul. And didn't prevent him from keeping the powers bestowed upon him after that fact. So, those bandits, as they look hungrily at the rest of their farmstead, the boy raised up, and burned them all to a crisp with hellfire he had just obtained from of course, his new demonic father. His mother, though, even with being saved, could not stand the sight of this man who had just sold his soul and become a demon his own. His entire physical form had changed and represented what his new soul looked like on the inside. She was disgusted, and he knew this would happen. He knew that it's too much of a change for any loving person to really take, but he did it for them anyway. And with that, he knew that he would have to go on his own journey to take back his own soul. He could feel, though, as the more time progressed, that the fact that he was missing what makes all people people, it was starting to change him, and not for the better. He seemed to care less about what other people wanted and became less empathetic. And even if somebody was dying on the side of the road, if it wasn't to benefit him, he had no interest in the matter. Thankfully, a band of 5 other people, a traveling group of mercenaries, that perhaps I'll name at another time and tell you their tales as well, they joined together and realized that, well, they could accomplish their goals. The man was powerful and could, of course, take down any foes that they had in front of them, and they, in turn, could help him get to a stronger state of being and bring him closer to where he needed to be. Now, working with this man was awfully difficult since everything had to revolve around him, but if your goals align, being selfish always means moving forward. Spent many years with them, getting more powerful, of course training himself. He went on multiple missions out to go slay demons to increase the devil's reputation amongst the other devils. Eventually, the band of mercenaries became tired and weary of their travels and decided to acquire a homestead. They all wanted to settle down with their coin and not have to go slay for money anymore. But Nilivor had other plans still, so he departed their group and found a cult. Usually a man would go to a priest for religious help, but he knew he needed to get down to the depths of hell. And so joining a measly doomsday cult would really help him bring him to that goal. Remember, he's doing this for selfish means, not for good or evil. If he has to bring about a couple sacrifices along the way, he was on board for it. And with that, about a month with these people, and a number of innocent people sacrificed. The blood on his hands added to the countless number of others that he had to go through. Was transported to hell, and was able to trek along for many, many days to his master's palace. See, over the course of the years that he had been working for him, he had grown in strength and prestige. I mean, he had killed many devils and demons to raise his reputation, and it showed for sure with his new abode and new pair of wings and claws, things that made him more ferocious than Nilivor had remembered. But in turn, Nilivor had also grown in power, and both of them seemed to know, even though this devil never really spoke to him and never really had to interact with him, he knew that this day was going to be a confrontation of the two, of whether he continued to serve him, or if all of the work he put behind this contract would go to waste. Noticing he had been tricked, of course, he jumped from his chair and leapt at Nilivor, clawing and biting at him. But Nilivor, of course, with all this training he had gone through, was able to easily block all of his attacks. The demon wasn't really trained for battle, more of an aristocrat. Nilivor took this to his advantage, using all the wonderful and delicate maneuvers that he was taught from his band of mercenaries. Deftly sweeping the demon under his legs and stabbing at him, he took his time. He knew that he was going to win the battle, but he didn't want it to be over just yet. See, the devil may have given him this power, but he still resented the fact that he had to turn to them and obey him over all these years. With all things, though, and as death is in real life, it was unceremonious. A single stab through the heart, and it was over. No flashy powers, no extra last words, just over. Devil fell to the floor. Nilivor's contract seemingly void, and he was still left with the abilities to continue. Not only that, but his soul returned to him, and he wept at all the things he had to do to get here, for his empathy and morality all returned to him at once. He realized now that with all the terrible things he did along the way, the group he was with still seemed to steer him in a positive direction, and it wasn't all horrible. He could still live with himself and return to the estate, not entirely disgusted by who he became. But, of course, he went to go see his mother first. With his new, fresh face, she welcomed him into his arms and thanked him for all he did. It took her time to adjust to the fact that he had done this for her, but of course in time, with not seeing him for a while and realizing that without what he had done, she would have never survived, there was gratitude instead of disgust when he returned. And then, after his reunion with his fellow mercenaries and his reunion with his mother, he decided he wanted to go see more of the world with his own new, fresh eyes instead of the ones that were tainted by selfish deeds. And ended up in this tavern to tell me the story of how he made a contract with a demon to save his mom, and also how he tricked the demon into keeping his soul. That's it. The end.
Nice. Alright. Seems